Morning. We wanted to talk a little bit about content and organic distribution. With so many people creating content these days, individuals, brands, it's very difficult to stand out online with any sort of content, whether it's a long-form video or a Vine video or a single tweet. So the big question is, how do brands create content that is actually going to stand out, and how do they ensure it's being distributed in the best and most efficient way? Here to talk about that with us is Jenna Bromberg, Pizza Hut's head of digital engagement, and Tim Staples, CEO of Shareability. And they're going to discuss Pizza Hut's recent Danger of the Selfie Stick PSA campaign, which was for a limited time product called the Big Flavor Dipper, co-branded with Pepsi. So Jenna, why don't you tell us a little bit about the campaign and sort of how it came to be?
So the Big Flavor Dipper was 2 feet of pizza, which is a really, really big pizza. So a lot of you probably saw our TV campaign, which was, we're gonna need a bigger car. We're gonna need a bigger door to fit the pizza through. So knowing that the Big Flavor Dipper was so big, we probably wouldn't be able to, say, take a selfie with it. We were gonna need a bigger selfie stick. So we went to Shareability along with our friends at Pepsi, and we came up with a very, very interesting campaign. So Tim can kick off the idea that he brought to us, and we can kind of go back and forth about how it turned out.
Nice. Yeah, so the goal, number one, is always to entertain. You have to start with the entertainment. So selfie sticks is something that's been hot for a long time, obviously for all the right and wrong reasons. Some people love them, some people hate them. And so we figured it was time to do a PSA warning about the dangers of selfie sticks.
So this is right around the time that Wimbledon was banning selfie sticks. They weren't allowed at the Kentucky Derby. So the cultural crest of the selfie stick phenomenon was just about to, as they say, what was it, jump the shark, as you used to call it. So it was time to get out there into the world with a very, very interesting piece of content that was really the first to speak out against the selfie stick phenomenon.
Yeah, I think it was the week after they banned them at Disney, which was like, perfect, let's go. So we got the video here, we're gonna roll it now. This is the selfie stick PSA from Pizza Hut. Apparently we don't have the video and we're not gonna roll it now.
Okay.
So anyway, you guys can check it out on your phones. It's really a great piece, and I guess we're gonna move right into talking about it instead of showing it. Trust me, it's really funny.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the success of it and how you went about distributing it and just sort of the overall strategy?
Cool. Yeah, so it was, with these big videos, it's always about value for the audience. And, I think a lot of brands for the last 50 years have all been beating their chest and talking about me, and the days of beating your chest we think are over. And it's got to start with value for the audience. It's got to say, hey, it's not about me, it's about them. And if I start with the audience, I at least have a shot. And so, that takes a lot of different parties, but it takes a brand that actually gets that and is willing to take risks. So Pizza Hut just happens to be, fortunately for us, one of those brands that's willing to push the limits and try things. So in terms of metrics from the campaign, we could go on all day, but it exploded across the internet. It was one of the top 10 videos on YouTube globally. It's done over 4 million views on YouTube organically. It's done over 7 million views on Facebook organically. And it has a tremendous amount of engagement, comments, and the like.
So what's really interesting about the selfie stick video, and it's something that we as Pizza Hut had never tried before, is the branding in this video lasts all of 10 seconds. And it's right in the middle of the story. It's certainly not just a plain old product placement. The scene where the Big Flavor Dipper pizza is featured is integral to the story, certainly. So it's not just a flash of a logo or a delivery driver rolling by. There's a whole scene in the middle of it that features a pizza party and this driver saying, oh, this is almost 2 feet of pizza. Everything is getting so big now, even the selfie sticks, which is really, really cool. And you remember that it comes from Pizza Hut when you finish watching the video. However, to Tim's point, what we did was created a really, really cool story that helps advance the brand narrative and really says something about the fact that our brand is culturally relevant, we get it, we hear ya, and it's not, as Tim calls it, chess beaty. It's certainly not. It's not all about Pizza Hut. It's not about how we fit into your life, how we bring this really cool phenomenon story to you. It's literally like a blip on the radar in the story, but it is memorable.
Yeah, and if you've ever tried this kind of content, you know it's really, really, really hard. It's really hard. To break through today, it's hard enough to be a celebrity or a studio or a television network and to break through. What chance does a brand have, is what I always like to say. It's really hard, so you have to do a lot of things. And number one, you have to trust the audience and you have to make the first step towards them and give them something of value. And number two, you know, as Jenna said, this whole concept of less is more. Like millennials hate to be sold to. So if you engage them, if you get them involved in your content and you take the first step towards them, that can be really successful down the line. If you come charging at them and talking me, it's like being the bad guest at a cocktail party. It's like the same type of mindset and the same type of etiquette. How do I make the first step? How do I engage my audience instead of expecting them to engage me? And that's something we always think about.
Well, along those lines, it sounds like you guys have some insights that other people can take away. The first thing that I wanted to ask you guys about is how do brands actually tap into pop culture or current events or whatever is going on at the time in a way that's not going to be forced or perceived as forced by consumers or inauthentic. What do you advise brands look for, and what do you think they should avoid?
So I have two rules. The first is don't be dorky. And the second is, why would I, as a consumer, care about what Pizza Hut or any brand is about to tell me? So to wrap that all up into a bow that's a little bit more tidy, there's a difference between being culturally relevant and culture jacking. If we go back to the cocktail party analogy, you don't want to be the dorky guy who sidles up to a conversation that's already in progress, tries to interrupt and say, hey, what are you guys talking about? And then completely take over the conversation. Brands should act that way all the time. And you know, when you think about the old Oreo dunk in the dark tweets and all these brands attempting to be culturally relevant by culture jacking and making a pop culture conversation about them, it reads inauthentic. People call it out immediately. The engagement's pretty low if you look across the board on tweets like that. And I'll even say we had, as Pizza Hut, one success with a culture jacky tweet, and that was the night of the dress, which I think we all remember vividly. It was a great day in internet history. There were llamas escaping, and the dress happened. It was all great. We tweeted, it's white and gold, and we had a picture of our triple cheese covered stuffed crust pizza, which in fact was white and gold. And it was so great, and we got 44,000 retweets, and it was so amazing with absolutely no paid amplification whatsoever. But what did that say about our brand? How did it tell our brand story? How did it tell consumers that we were relevant and smart and sold a really good pizza? Didn't. It was just a little flash in the pan.
Yeah, there's always a litmus test on that point of just starting with the same thing, and I hate to keep going back to it, but what does the audience want? What would my audience appreciate? And if you start there, you can get 90% of the way. And I think that's so foreign to a lot of different brand culture that it's obviously changing, but there's a long way to go. And I think if brands truly want to be in the space of being content providers, they're going to have to completely change their mindset in terms of how they deal with audience. And I think, you know, it takes little by little and step by step, but the first step is to try things. You're not always going to get there right out of the gate, but how do you try things to go take that step and to learn and to double down on the things that are working and to release the things that aren't? And I think that's a big piece of this, is it's about experimentation, and it really is about being not afraid to fail, and then you get better and better.
Well, another thing I wanted to ask you guys about, you were talking about it a little bit, but I think it's worth expanding on is the less is more concept, right? There's a balance that you have to strike. You have to do a lot of those quick tweets that are maybe touching on a thing that's happening in a given moment, but you also want something that's going to help advance your larger brand's narrative. So how do you factor that in while still doing just enough, not too much, but not too little?
I think if we go back to the selfie stick video, that piece of content was created by anchoring the concept in not just a cultural insight, but a product insight. The entire Big Flavor Dipper campaign was about this pizza is so big, it needs a bigger car, selfie stick, et cetera, et cetera. So it really, really spoke to the product benefit and the uniqueness of the product, but because the overall message was about this pizza being so big and everything being so big, and it was anchored in cultural insight, we didn't need to brand the crap out of it. And look, believe me, I tried. And Tim remembers a couple conversations where I was like,
couple awkward moments.
ooh, we need to put more t-shirts that say Pizza Hut and more boxes. And he was like, no. Why would anyone care about that? What's that gonna do for you? And he was absolutely right. And so the other lesson that we learned in this process is to trust content creators. Trust people like Tim, or if you're working with YouTube creators, on the influencer level or what have you, they know what content works well for not just your brand's audience, but an engaged video content consuming audience. And sometimes they know better than you. And it's okay. It's okay to put, not your brand's story, but at least your faith in somebody else's hands.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as a content creator, we work with a lot of brands, and they all say they want to create shareable content, but when push comes to shove and you're at the 2-yard line, what they really want is a commercial that goes viral. That's what they want. I said on Twitter I wasn't going to say viral today, but I just did, so sorry about that. But that, so there really is a give and a take, and so this whole less and more analogy about doing it for the audience, it's just a different type of mindset in terms of how you look at this content. If you start with the brand, you're doomed before you start. If you start with the audience, at least you have a chance.
And we've been talking about, actually the strategy behind creating this content. But then there's also this aspect of organic distribution that we should look into a bit more. And it's like, okay, so you've got something that you think is really good. You've got a good piece of content.
Yeah.
Not everything, to use your Oreo example, is going to be retweeted like crazy. So what are some strategies, Tim, that you would employ to basically give you the best chances of getting your content distributed and going viral?
Yep. The content is obviously a big piece of it, but it's about 50%. So there's a whole back end of this world about how you distribute this content and make it successful and have it kind of explode across the web. And it's not brain surgery, but it's really, really important. And so we have a whole back end group of 20, 25 people that all they do is seed content around the web. So basically you're taking a great piece of content, you're putting it in all the right places so that it can become like a snowball that's rolling down the hill. If you take an unshareable piece of content, that's like a rock. It's going to get to the bottom of the hill. It's going to be the same size as when it started. But if you take a snowball and you start to accelerate that snowball, you get to the bottom of the hill, and now you have 1 million views or 5 million views or maybe even 50 million views. But it really is the two pieces working hand in hand, and it's so important if you have the right piece of content.
The one thing I would add to that, he keeps saying if you have a shareable piece of content. Well, how do you know this is shareable? For us, honestly, before this video went live, we probably showed it to 150 different people around the office, in our lives, who had different senses of humor. I mean, there are a couple of lines in there. I can remember this line that this older woman says in the video about the World Wide Web. And I called Tim and I was like, that is the dorkiest line I have ever heard. He said,
exactly
well, just show it to, just show it to some people. Just show it to some people. And that line got more laughs than anything in that video.
Yeah.
So making sure that you show it to an audience that's not just you, maybe even an audience outside your brand headquarters, really can show you some powerful potential, or kind of stop you in your tracks if you think your commercial's real cool and fun and shareable. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, Jenna's she's like a social influencer herself. Like, she understands this medium and she understands social, but sometimes that means you're too close to it, right? It's like it's something that's a little bit more mainstream. Well, that's a good example, right? You're like, I don't think that's cool, but someone else might. That's a little less plugged in than you. And it's how do you balance all those variables into one big bag of stew?
Yeah, do you guys ever actually do A/B testing for your digital content before you?
We do on a pretty small scale right now. For something like this big piece of hero content, this was the first time, honestly, that we'd done something so big with digital video. And if I could do something differently next time, it would be maybe a very, very small A/B test of a couple different pieces of dialogue. But we got real lucky with this one that most of the jokes landed and hit and resonated.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just wanted to see, does anybody else out there have a question that in the blue deck back there?
I'm just wondering if you tracked the impact of the campaign on actual revenue results.
So the coolest part about being in the pizza category versus the rest of QSR is we are very, very easily able to attribute sales to the success of the video because of our e-commerce platforms, of course. So about 50% of our orders come in online, so we were able to track where those orders were coming from after we released the selfie stick video, and traffic to pizzahut.com, which we were able to attribute back to the selfie stick video, increased 4,000% upstream, not traffic overall, but upstream from YouTube and other places that the videos were embedded, which was really cool.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, these videos have huge impacts when you do them right. And they literally explode across the web, and they affect every piece of your business. And so I think in the future, it's going to be about how do you create an idea that can travel across every platform. And it's going to be different for YouTube than Facebook, than Snapchat, than what you're going to do in experiential or at retail. But I think you'll see a lot more centralization of the idea that can go across everything.
Great. Anybody else have a question?
Hi there. I'm curious, did you release the video through just one platform or through all of them, or how did you roll it out? What was your...
Yeah, so we cut these in a lot of different ways. I mean, the two primaries are still YouTube and Facebook. But even 6 months ago, we would primarily use YouTube and Facebook would be an afterthought, and now they're neck and neck. We really think about both, and we think about a strategy, how they complement one versus the other, because they travel across the web in very different ways. You know, YouTube is much better to be embedded in articles, and the journalists typically run with the YouTube side, whereas Facebook, in the way that it's embedded within the feed, is so much more shareable. So the shares are higher on Facebook, the articles are higher on YouTube, and those things work together in a really great way. And then depending on the client and how deep you want to go, then you go to all the different channels from a social perspective. In this one, we went through a handful of channels, and I think the next one will continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. Huh, interesting. Anyone else?
Quick follow-up. Did you put any pacing in it?
A small amount. Relative to the production cost of the video, it was a very small amount. The vast majority of shares and views came from organic distribution, which was staggering.
Yeah, I think it was 95%.
Wow.
And there is a piece to that, you know, as we always talk about, is you know, a complementary accelerator is what we call it. So even if you're truly focused on organic, you want a little bit of a bump, especially in the early days, just to build momentum. We found that helps and is invaluable to kind of get it out and get it into the world.
Great. Well, thanks so much, both of you, for your time.
Yeah, and watch the video. Sorry we couldn't show it to you.
Yes, please go online to watch the video. Great.
Order pizza. Thanks.